Somewhere in China, at this very moment, the sun is rising over a temple made of solid gold, floating on an ocean of clouds nearly 10,000 feet in the air. In another province, a river, the color of liquid amber, is thundering off a cliff into a canyon carved over millions of years. And on a windswept plateau, higher than most mountains in Europe, a palace with 1,000 rooms is catching the first light of dawn against a sky so clear it looks like painted glass. These are not scenes from a fantasy film. They are real places, standing today in a country most of the world thinks it already understands. But China is vast beyond imagination. It stretches from tropical rainforest to frozen desert, from limestone forests that grew from the bottom of an ancient sea to grasslands so wide the horizon curves away in every direction. And hidden inside that immensity are landscapes so strange, so beautiful, and so quietly impossible that even seasoned travelers refuse to believe they exist until they stand before them. Over the next hour, we are going to count down 15 of the most extraordinary hidden places in China. We will visit an ancient town built on wooden stilts above a mirror-still river, an island where cars have been banned for a century, and the only sound is piano music drifting through the streets, and a mountain range that glows crimson and gold as if the earth itself were on fire. We will stand beneath a Buddha so large that a grown adult would not reach the top of its foot, and beside a lake so blue that scientists still argue about how it holds its color. Some of these places are sacred. Some are geological accidents that took the planet 300 million years to build. All of them have been shaped by the same quiet forces: water, wind, faith, and time, working patiently across the centuries. And we are saving one of the most breathtaking of all for number one. So settle in and let the outside world fall away. This is the China the postcards never show you. Welcome to the unseen China and the hidden places you will not believe are real. Number 15. Fenghuang Ancient Town, Tuojiang River, Hunan Province. Imagine waking to the sound of water lapping against wooden posts in a house that has stood on stilts above a river for more than 300 years. This is Fenghuang, the Phoenix Ancient Town, tucked into the misty hills of Hunan Province in south-central China. Fenghuang was built along the banks of the Tuojiang River, and its most famous houses do not sit beside the water. They sit directly above it. These are the Diaojiaolu, the hanging-foot houses, wooden dwellings raised on tall, slender stilts that plunge straight into the riverbed. From a boat drifting downstream, the town appears to float, an unbroken wall of dark timber and grey tile balanced on hundreds of wooden legs, reflected perfectly in the still green water below. The town dates back to the Qing dynasty, with its surviving walls raised around the year 1704. For centuries, it was a frontier settlement, home to the Miao and Tujia peoples, whose descendants still live here today. Walk its narrow lanes, and you find flagstone streets worn smooth by generations of feet, red lanterns swaying in the river breeze, and old women in embroidered headdresses selling ginger candy and hand-dyed cloth exactly as their grandmothers did. At night, Fenghuang transforms. Thousands of lanterns switch on along both riverbanks, and their reflections turn the Tuojiang into a ribbon of shifting gold and crimson light. Locals cross the river the old way, by stepping stones, single flat rocks set just above the surface, spaced one stride apart. There are no railings. There is only balance, and the black water moving quietly beneath your feet. Would you trust your footing on stones that have carried travelers safely across for centuries, with nothing to hold on to but the night air? For the people of Fenghuang, it is simply the walk home. What makes this place remarkable is not that it is old. China has many old towns. It is that Fenghuang has survived almost untouched. A living fragment of a world that has vanished nearly everywhere else. Still breathing, still lantern-lit, still standing on its wooden legs above the river that gave it life. Number 14. Gulangyu Island, Xiamen, Fujian Province. Leaving the river town behind, we travel east to the coast of Fujian Province, where a small island guards a secret that has made it unlike anywhere else in China. Its name is Gulangyu, and the moment you step off the ferry, you notice something missing. There are no cars, no motorcycles, no buses. On this island of roughly 2 square kilometers, motor vehicles have been banned for over a century. What fills the silence, instead, is music. Gulangyu is known across China as the Piano Island because, for its tiny population, it holds one of the highest concentrations of pianos anywhere on Earth. Drift through its winding lanes at dusk, and you will hear scales and sonatas floating from open windows, mingling with the sound of the sea. The island even has a dedicated piano museum, its halls filled with rare instruments gathered from around the world. The reason for all this lies in the island's strange history. In the 1840s, following the Opium Wars, Gulangyu became an international settlement, and diplomats and merchants from more than a dozen nations built their homes here. The result is an astonishing architectural collage, more than 1,000 villas and mansions blending European columns, colonial verandas, and traditional Chinese roofs, tumbling down green hillsides toward the water. In 2017, this remarkable fusion earned Gulangyu a place on the UNESCO World Heritage List. Wander uphill, and you reach Sunlight Rock, the island's highest point, where the whole of Gulangyu spreads below you, red rooftops half buried in banyan trees, and beyond them, the skyscrapers of the mainland city of Xiamen glittering across the strait. The contrast is startling. On one side of the water, a roaring modern metropolis. On the other, an island frozen in a gentler century, where the loudest thing you will hear is a child practicing the piano. To walk Gulangyu is to step outside of time. No engines, no horns, no rush, only sea air, old stone, and music carried on the wind through streets that have chosen to stay exactly as they were. Number 13. Mount Danxia, Shaoguan, Guangdong Province. If you think you have seen every color a mountain can be, the red cliffs of Danxia will change your mind. Rising in northern Guangdong Province, Mount Danxia is the birthplace of a landscape so distinctive that geologists named an entire category of terrain after it. Around the world, these formations are now called Danxia landforms, and this is where the science began. The rock here is a deep, burning red, a coarse sandstone and conglomerate laid down over tens of millions of years when this region was a hot inland basin. Iron in the sediment slowly oxidized, rusting the stone from within, staining it the color of dried blood and autumn fire. Then water and wind went to work, carving the soft red rock into sheer cliffs, isolated pillars, deep gorges, and rounded domes that glow like embers when the low sun strikes them at dawn and dusk. The effect is otherworldly. Entire hillsides look as though they have been dipped in flame, their crimson faces streaked with bands of orange, ochre, and rose. In 2010, Mount Danxia and 5 other sites were together inscribed as a UNESCO World Heritage Landscape, recognized as some of the finest examples of this rare, red rock terrain anywhere on the planet. Among the strange shapes carved into the range, none draws more visitors than a pair of formations. Locals have named with earthy humor, one resembling an ancient sage, another shaped unmistakably like parts of the human body. But the real spectacle is scale. Stand at a viewing platform as mist rises from the valleys at sunrise, and you watch thousands of red peaks emerge from a white sea of cloud, each one crowned with green pine like islands of fire in an ocean of silk. How does a mountain come to look like a sunset that never fades? The answer is patience. on a timescale the human mind can barely hold. Millions of years of iron and water quietly painting the stone. Danxia is proof that the earth is not only a builder of mountains, but an artist, working in red. Number 12. The golden summit of Mount Emei, Emei-shan, Sichuan Province. Have you ever stood on a mountain where the ground below you is not earth, but an endless ocean of clouds? At the summit of Mount Emei in Sichuan Province, that is exactly where you find yourself, 10,000 feet in the sky, on a peak the Chinese have considered sacred for nearly 2,000 years. Mount Emei is one of the 4 holy mountains of Chinese Buddhism, and its crown is the Golden Summit, rising to 3,099 meters, more than 10,000 feet above sea level. Here, on a platform seemingly at the edge of the world, stands one of the most breathtaking sights in all of China, a colossal golden statue of the Bodhisattva Samantabhadra, seated upon 4 bronze elephants, gleaming 48 meters into the thin mountain air. Beside it rise the Golden Hall and the Silver Hall, temple buildings sheathed in shining metal that catch the sunrise and throw it back in blinding light. Most days, the summit floats above a vast sea of cloud that fills the valleys below, so that the Golden Buddha appears to hover in heaven itself. And on rare afternoons, pilgrims witness something stranger still, a phenomenon known as Buddha's halo, a perfect ring of rainbow light that forms in the mist, encircling the shadow of anyone who stands at the cliff's edge. For centuries, monks believed this glowing halo was a sign of enlightenment, and a few, overcome, were said to have stepped toward it into the clouds. Reaching this place is itself an act of devotion. The full pilgrimage climbs tens of thousands of stone steps, winding past ancient monasteries, through forests where wild macaque monkeys watch travelers from the trees, and up into air so high the temperature can plunge below freezing even in summer. Would you climb into the clouds for a chance to see a golden Buddha catch the first light of dawn? For 15 centuries, pilgrims have answered yes. Mount Emei is where the earth reaches up to touch the sky, and where, on the clearest mornings, it is genuinely difficult to tell which is which. Number 11. The Leshan Giant Buddha, Lingyun Hill, Leshan, Sichuan Province. Not far from Mount Emei, where 3 rivers crash together in a churning confluence, a mountain has a face. Carved directly into the red cliff of Lingyun Hill sits the Leshan Giant Buddha, the largest stone Buddha in the world, gazing out over the water with an expression of perfect, immovable calm. The numbers are almost impossible to believe. The Buddha stands 71 meters tall, roughly the height of a 20-story building. Its head alone is nearly 15 meters high. Each ear stretches 7 meters, long enough to fit 2 grown adults inside. And its feet are so vast that a person standing on the great toe would not reach the top of the Buddha's foot. More than 100 people could sit together on that single instep. But the most extraordinary part is why it was built. In the 8th century, during the Tang dynasty, the meeting point of the Min, Dadu, and Qinghai rivers was a killer. The waters collided so violently that boats were smashed and travelers drowned by the hundreds. A monk named Haitong believed that carving an enormous Buddha into the cliff would calm the currents and protect the boatmen. He began the work around the year 713, and legend says that when officials threatened to seize his funding, he gouged out his own eyes to prove his sincerity. The carving took 90 years and outlived him by decades, finished around the year 803. And here is the quiet miracle. The vast piles of rock chipped away from the cliff were dumped into the river below, which actually reshaped the currents and made the water safer, just as Haitong had hoped. Faith and engineering, it turned out, achieved the same end. Hidden within the statue is a genius drainage system. Channels concealed in the Buddha's hair, collar and robes that carry rainwater away and have protected the sandstone for more than 1,200 years. Sit in a small boat at the Buddha's feet, look up, and you feel your own smallness in the most profound way, a single human life, drifting past a face that has watched these rivers flow for over 1,000 years. Number 10. Huangguoshu Waterfall, Anshan, Guizhou Province. In the misty highlands of Guizhou Province, one of the least visited corners of China, the earth splits open and a river throws itself into the void. This is Huangguoshu, the largest waterfall in China and one of the greatest in all of Asia. The falls plunge roughly 78 meters, about the height of a 20-story tower, and spread more than 100 meters wide when the summer rains are at their peak. The sound arrives before the sight does, a deep rolling thunder that you feel in your chest from far down the valley. When the water hits the pool below, it explodes into a permanent cloud of spray that drifts for hundreds of meters and hangs rainbows in the air on any sunlit day. But Huangguoshu holds a secret that almost no other great waterfall on earth can match. Behind the roaring curtain of water lies a natural cave, and a path runs straight through it. Visitors can walk behind the falls, threading along a rock passage as tens of thousands of tons of water crash down just an arm's length away, close enough to reach out and touch the shining wall. This is the famous Water Curtain Cave, and standing inside it, deafened and drenched in mist, is one of the most visceral experiences the natural world offers. The waterfall is fed by the Baishui River, whose name means white water, and it is only the crown jewel of an entire chain of falls, rapids, and caves that riddle this limestone landscape. For centuries, the region was so remote and rugged that few outsiders ever saw it, which is exactly why it remained pristine. Would you dare to walk behind a wall of falling water with the whole weight of a river thundering past your shoulder? At Huangguoshu, thousands do it every day, and every one of them comes out changed, ears ringing, clothes soaked, and grinning like a child. It is nature at its loudest, its wettest, and its most gloriously alive. Number 9. The Stone Forest of Yunnan, Shilin, Kunming, Yunnan Province. Imagine a forest where nothing grows, where every towering trunk is made of solid grey stone, and where the paths twist and fork through blades of rock taller than houses. This is the Stone Forest of Yunnan, known in Chinese as Shilin, one of the strangest landscapes on the surface of the planet. Here, thousands upon thousands of limestone pillars rise vertically from the ground, some sharp as swords, some worn into weird organic shapes, packed so tightly together that walking among them feels like wandering through the streets of a petrified city. The tallest spires soar more than 30 meters into the air. From a distance, the whole formation genuinely resembles a dark forest, until you draw close and realize the trees are stone. The story of how it formed is almost harder to believe than the sight of it. Around 270 million years ago, long before the dinosaurs, this entire region lay beneath a shallow sea. Layer after layer of limestone built up on the seabed. Then the land rose, and over unimaginable spans of time, rainwater, faintly acidic, began to dissolve the soft rock, cutting downward along cracks and fissures until only these tall, hard pillars were left standing. What you see is the skeleton of an ancient ocean floor, sculpted by nothing but falling rain. To the local Yi people, the stone forest is also a place of legend. They tell the story of Ashima, a beautiful and strong-willed young woman who, forbidden to marry the man she loved, turned into one of the standing stones so she could remain in her homeland forever. To this day, one particular pillar is said to be her, and visitors call her name to hear the echo answer back from the rock. The stone forest is now a UNESCO World Heritage Site, protected as one of the finest examples of karst terrain anywhere on Earth. Walk into it at dawn, when mist curls between the pillars and birdsong echoes off the stone, and you will feel as though you have stepped into a dream the planet had, a forest that grew from the bottom of a vanished sea. Number 8. Hukou Waterfall, on the Yellow River, Shanxi and Shaanxi border. Leaving the tropical south behind, we travel north to the great muddy artery of Chinese civilization, the Yellow River, and to the place where it performs its most violent and spectacular act. This is Hukou Waterfall, the largest yellow waterfall in the world. For most of its course, the Yellow River is broad and slow, spreading hundreds of meters across the flat brown plains. But at Hukou, on the border between Shanxi and Shaanxi provinces, the entire river is suddenly forced through a rocky gorge only a few dozen meters wide. The result is astonishing. All that water, thick with the golden silt that gives the river its name and its color, is squeezed and hurled off a ledge into a churning cauldron below. The name Hukou means kettle spout, and it is perfect. From above, the river genuinely looks as if it is being poured from the mouth of an enormous kettle, folding in on itself, roaring, and vanishing into a canyon of its own making. The falls stretch as wide as 50 meters in flood season, and the spray rises so high it can be seen and heard from a great distance, sometimes drifting upward like smoke against the pale northern sky. This is not the gentle beauty of a tropical cascade. Hukou is raw power, the color of liquid earth, and it has held a special place in the Chinese heart for thousands of years. The Yellow River is often called the cradle of Chinese civilization, the river along whose banks the earliest dynasties rose, and Hukou is the moment it shows its untamed soul. It appears in ancient poetry, in patriotic songs, even on the nation's currency. In winter, the scene transforms yet again. The spray freezes into vast sheets and curtains of ice that cling to the surrounding rock, turning the golden torrent into a landscape of amber water and blue-white frost. Stand at the edge, feel the ground tremble beneath your feet, and you understand why, for the people of China, this thundering yellow river is not just water. It is the pulse of the nation itself. Number 7. Pingyao Ancient City, Xinjiang, Shanxi Province. Most of China's ancient cities were swallowed long ago by concrete and glass, but in Shanxi Province, one walled city escaped the tide of time almost completely intact. Step through the gates of Pingyao, and you step 600 years into the past. Pingyao is the best-preserved, ancient walled city in all of China. Its massive rampart, raised in its current form around the year 1370, still stands complete, 6 kilometers of tamped earth and grey brick, 12 meters high, ringed by watchtowers and a moat, enclosing the old town like a fortress. Inside, nearly 4,000 traditional courtyard houses survive, along with temples, shops, and streets laid out on the same grid the city has followed since the Ming dynasty. There are no skyscrapers here, no neon towers, only tiled roofs, wooden shop fronts, and red lanterns stretching down lanes barely wide enough for a cart. But Pingyao's greatest secret is not its walls, it is money. In the early 19th century, a Pingyao merchant house called Rishenchang opened what is widely considered the first modern draft bank in China, a place where a traveling merchant could deposit silver in one city and withdraw it in another, hundreds of miles away, using nothing but a paper note and a secret code. It was revolutionary. Soon Pingyao became the financial heart of the entire empire, a small provincial town that, for a time, controlled a huge share of China's silver trade. Bankers here handled fortunes that moved goods from Mongolia to the tropical south. That is the strange magic of Pingyao. This quiet, time-worn city was once a Wall Street of the East, and you can still visit the original bank, its counting rooms and strong boxes preserved exactly as they were. Walk its streets at night, when the crowds thin and the lanterns glow against the old stone, and the centuries seem to fold together. You can almost hear the click of an abacus, the clink of silver, the footsteps of merchants who once made this humble walled town the beating financial heart of an empire. Number 6. The Longmen Grottoes, Yi River, Luoyang, Henan Province. Along the banks of the Yi River near the city of Luoyang, in Henan Province, two limestone hills face each other across the water, and their cliffs are honeycombed with one of the greatest galleries of religious art ever created. This is the Longmen Grottoes, where more than 100,000 Buddhist statues were carved into the rock over 4 centuries. The figures here range from tiny images just a few centimeters tall to a single seated Buddha of overwhelming grandeur. Across some 2,300 caves and niches, ancient artisans carved over 100,000 statues, along with thousands of inscriptions and dozens of pagodas. The crown of it all is the great Vairocana Buddha, 17 meters tall, its face famously serene and, some say, modeled on a Tang dynasty empress. Sit at its feet and look up, and that colossal stone face gazes back with an expression of such calm that it seems to quiet the mind of everyone who stands before it. The carving began around the year 493, when the Northern Wei dynasty moved its capital to nearby Luoyang, and continued for more than 400 years, through the golden age of the Tang. That long span makes Longmen a kind of stone timeline of Chinese art. You can watch styles evolve from cave to cave, the stiffer, more elongated figures of the early period slowly softening into the round, graceful, worldly forms of the Tang, when Chinese Buddhist sculpture reached its highest expression. Every one of these statues was paid for by someone: an emperor, a monk, a wealthy family, a group of ordinary believers pooling their savings, each hoping to earn merit and be remembered. Many left inscriptions recording their names and their prayers, so that the cliffs are not only carved with gods, but with the hopes of the human beings who made them. Now a UNESCO World Heritage Site, the Longmen Grottoes are among the finest treasures of world sculpture. To drift past them on the Yi River at sunset, when golden light fills the caves and 100,000 stone faces glow softly in the cliffs, is to feel the weight of 15 centuries of faith, patiently carved, one chisel stroke at a time. Number 5. Mount Tai, Tai'an, Shandong Province. In Shandong Province stands a mountain that emperors climbed for over 2,000 years, a mountain that Chinese have long considered the holiest of them all. Its name is Mount Tai, the foremost of the 5 great mountains of China, and to ascend it is to walk one of the oldest pilgrimage routes on Earth. Mount Tai rises to about 1,545 meters. That is not especially tall by the standards of the Himalayas, but height was never the point. For millennia, this mountain was believed to be the place where heaven and earth drew closest, where the ruler of the human world could speak to the gods. 72 emperors are said to have made the journey here to perform the sacred Fengshan ceremonies, offering sacrifices at the summit to legitimize their reign. Confucius climbed it, poets climbed it, and ordinary pilgrims have climbed it by the millions for longer than almost any sacred site still in use anywhere. The classic ascent is a staircase carved into the mountain itself. Roughly 7,000 stone steps, winding up through pine forests, past ancient temples, stone gateways, and cliffs inscribed with poetry and prayers left by travelers across the centuries. Near the top, you pass through the South Heaven Gate, a stone archway that marks the threshold to the summit, and finally reach the highest point, the Jade Emperor Peak. The reward for that long climb is one of the most revered sights in Chinese culture, the sunrise over Mount Tai. Pilgrims traditionally climb through the night to reach the summit before dawn, then stand shoulder to shoulder in the cold, watching the sun break over a vast sea of cloud, flooding the world below with gold. For many, it is a deeply emotional moment, the same view that emperors and sages beheld thousands of years ago. Would you climb 7,000 steps in darkness for a single sunrise? Countless generations have, and Mount Tai, now a UNESCO World Heritage Site, remains what it has always been, not merely a mountain, but a stairway that an entire civilization has climbed toward the heavens. Number 4. Kanas Lake, Altai Mountains, Xinjiang. Far in the remote northwest, where China meets the borders of Kazakhstan, Russia, and Mongolia, the Altai Mountains cradle a lake so vividly colored that visitors often refuse to believe the photographs are real. This is Kanas Lake, one of the most beautiful and mysterious bodies of water in all of China. Kanas is an alpine lake formed by ancient glaciers stretching some 24 kilometers long and plunging to depths of nearly 190 meters. Fed by glacial meltwater rich in fine mineral particles, its surface shifts color with the seasons and the light, glowing turquoise, jade green, milky blue, and sometimes a deep sapphire, so intense it looks almost artificial. It sits ringed by dark forests of spruce and birch and snow-capped peaks, and in autumn, those forests turn to walls of flaming gold and red that double themselves perfectly in the still water. But Kanas is famous for more than its color. For generations, the local Tuvan and Kazakh herders have told stories of a monster living in its depths, a giant creature that supposedly drags horses into the water from the shallows. Skeptics laughed, until repeated sightings of large dark shapes and strange disturbances on the surface drew scientific expeditions to investigate. Researchers now believe the likeliest explanation is a population of enormous freshwater fish, a species of taimen that can reportedly grow to great size in these cold, deep, isolated waters. Whether or not a true monster swims beneath Kanas, the mystery has never been fully put to rest. Adding to the lake's otherworldly reputation is a phenomenon locals call the cloud dragon. On certain calm mornings, a thin ribbon of mist rises off the water and coils across the surface in a long, sinuous shape, drifting like something alive. The region is home to the Tuvan people, one of China's smallest ethnic groups, who still live in wooden cabins along the valley and herd animals much as their ancestors did. Kanas is so far from anywhere that few travelers ever reach it, and that remoteness is exactly what has kept it pristine, a jewel-colored lake hidden at the far edge of the map, still guarding its secrets. Number 3. Qinghai Lake, Qinghai Province. High on the roof of the world, where the air grows thin and the light turns crystalline, lies the largest lake in all of China. This is Qinghai Lake, a vast inland sea of salt water shimmering on the Tibetan plateau at more than 3,200 meters above sea level. The scale is difficult to grasp. Qinghai Lake covers roughly 4,400 square kilometers. So wide that standing on its shore, you cannot see the far side, only water meeting sky at a horizon that seems to belong to an ocean rather than a lake. It has no outlet to the sea. Rivers flow into it from the surrounding mountains, but the only way out is evaporation, which over the ages has left the water salty and mineral-rich, and given it a color of astonishing depth, a blue so pure it seems to glow against the brown and gold of the high plateau. Once a year, the land around the lake performs a miracle of color. In July, the fields of rapeseed that ring parts of the shoreline burst into bloom, and suddenly the deep blue water is framed by an endless band of brilliant yellow flowers, stretching to the base of snow-dusted mountains. It is one of the most photographed sights in western China, and in person, the contrast is almost overwhelming. The lake is also a sanctuary for life. At its western end lies Bird Island, one of the most important breeding grounds for migratory birds in Asia. Each spring, Tens of thousands of birds, bar-headed geese, gulls, cormorants, and rare species that cross the highest mountains on Earth gather here to nest, filling the sky and the shoreline with wings and cries. To the Tibetan people, Qinghai Lake is sacred, a holy body of water circled by pilgrims who walk or prostrate themselves along its immense shoreline, a journey that can take weeks. Prayer flags snap in the cold wind, and the deep blue water stretches on and on. Stand at its edge as the sun sets, watching that enormous sacred sea turn from turquoise to violet beneath the vast plateau sky, and you feel something rare, a sense of true wilderness, of a place still governed by wind, water, faith, and the changing of the seasons. Number 2. The Hulunbuir Grassland, Inner Mongolia. Imagine standing in the center of a green ocean, where in every direction the grass rolls unbroken to the curve of the horizon, and the only landmarks are the moving shadows of clouds. This is the Hulunbuir Grassland, in the far north of Inner Mongolia, one of the largest and most pristine grasslands left on Earth. Hulunbuir spreads across roughly 100,000 square kilometers, a plain of grass larger than many entire countries. It takes its name from two great lakes that lie within it, Hulun and Buir, and in summer it becomes a living carpet of green, threaded by rivers that wind across the flat land in impossibly lazy curves, doubling back on themselves again and again as they search for the sea. Wildflowers bloom in drifts of yellow, white, and violet, and the air is filled with the scent of grass and the sound of wind and larks. This is one of the last strongholds of the traditional Mongol way of life. Herders still move their sheep, cattle, goats, and horses across the open range, living in round white felt tents called yurts, and celebrating the ancient summer festival of Nadam with its thundering horse races, wrestling, and archery. To share a bowl of salty milk tea inside a yurt, as the vast grassland stretches silent outside, is to touch a culture that has flowed across these plains for thousands of years, back to the age of Genghis Khan, whose Mongol horsemen once rode out from grasslands very much like this one to conquer the largest empire the world had ever seen. At night, far from any city, Hulunbuir offers something almost lost to the modern world, a truly dark sky. With no light pollution for hundreds of kilometers, the stars blaze from horizon to horizon, and the Milky Way arches overhead so bright it casts a faint shadow on the grass. What would it feel like to fall asleep beneath that sky, wrapped in the silence of 100,000 square kilometers of grass? For the herders of Hulunbuir, it is simply another night at home. This is the open steppe as it has always been, wild, immense, and breathtakingly free. Number 1. The Potala Palace, Marpori Hill, Lhasa, Tibet. Rising above the city of Lhasa, on a red hill in the heart of Tibet, stands one of the most awe-inspiring buildings ever raised by human hands. This is the Potala Palace, a mountain of white and crimson walls climbing into the thin, brilliant air of the highest plateau on Earth. The Potala sits at an altitude of roughly 3,700 meters, making it one of the highest ancient palaces in the world, a place where visitors from the lowlands must pause on every staircase just to catch their breath. From its base to the golden roofs at its summit, it rises more than 100 meters up the flank of the hill, 13 towering stories containing, by tradition, 1,000 rooms, 10,000 shrines, and some 200,000 statues. From below, it does not look like a building at all. It looks like the mountain itself has grown walls and windows. Construction of the great palace we see today began in the year 1645 under the 5th Dalai Lama on the site of a far older fortress. Thousands of laborers and artisans hauled stone and timber up the hill by hand, and the result became the winter residence of the Dalai Lamas and the spiritual and political center of Tibet for centuries. Its walls, in places several meters thick and packed with layers to withstand earthquakes, enclose a labyrinth of chapels, tombs, and assembly halls, glittering with gold, turquoise, and butter lamps that have burned for generations. The Potala is divided into two parts. The outer white palace held the government and the living quarters. The inner red palace is devoted entirely to religion, and within it lie the jeweled tombs of past Dalai Lamas, some encased in astonishing amounts of solid gold and studded with precious stones. For Tibetan Buddhists, the Potala is the holiest of destinations, and pilgrims still walk for weeks, sometimes prostrating themselves full length along the entire road just to circle its base and turn its prayer wheels. Now a UNESCO World Heritage Site, the Potala Palace remains what it has always been, a masterpiece rising against the sky, where architecture, faith, and the sheer scale of the Himalayan world all meet at the roof of the earth. From an ancient town balanced on wooden stilts above a mirror-still river to a car-free island where the streets sing with piano music. From mountains that burn red at sunset to a golden Buddha floating on a sea of clouds and a stone Buddha so vast that 100 people could rest on its foot. From a waterfall you can walk behind to a forest of stone that grew from the bottom of a vanished sea, to a river hurled off a cliff into a roaring yellow kettle. From a walled city that was once the beating financial heart of an empire, to 100,000 faces carved into a cliff, to a stairway of 7,000 steps that emperors climbed toward heaven. From a jewel-colored lake said to hide a monster, to a sacred inland sea ringed with yellow flowers, to a grassland so wide the stars touch the ground on every side. And finally, to a 1,000-room palace rising against the sky at the very roof of the world. 15 places, scattered across a country so immense it holds tropical rainforest and frozen desert, glaciers and grasslands, all within a single set of borders. And yet these 15 are only a beginning. For every place we have visited today, there are 100 more still hidden in China's vast interior, waiting quietly in valleys and on mountaintops that most travelers will never reach. What ties them all together is this: not one of them was built to impress you. The rivers carved their canyons for millions of years before anyone was watching. The pilgrims climbed their mountains out of devotion, not for a photograph. The herders and the monks and the townsfolk simply made their lives in these extraordinary places, and time, wind, faith, and water did the rest. That is what makes them so moving. They were never trying to be wonders. They simply are. So the next time you think you know what China looks like, remember the unseen China, the one that floats on clouds, glows red at dawn, and hides a palace of 1,000 rooms at the roof of the world. If you traveled all this way with us, tell us in the comments which of these 15 hidden places you would visit first. And if this journey moved you, consider subscribing so you can join us on the next one. The world is far stranger and far more beautiful than we are ever taught. Thank you for watching, and we will see you again, somewhere else the maps forgot.